Okay, we with a gentleman here, Ian Jones, better known as Jonesy. We call him Jonesy. Ian, I know we're going to get into the Iere part of the whole equation, but maybe you need to give me a little bit of your background from Trinidad. I guess you're from Trinidad, correct?
Yes, you're right about that. I I lived the first 23 years of my life in Trinidad. Yeah, I am. My football career really started towards the end of my elementary school. I went to St. Crispin, you see, primarily because my uncle was the headmaster and he was being very successful with college exhibition candidates.
Okay.
Yeah, so I ended up at St. Crispin's and spent the last 2 years of elementary school there. But when you're preparing for a college exhibition, you have very little time for anything else. So that's what I did. And after the exam, I think I played soccer with St. Crispin School. I played a few games. We played on Fatima Ground at that time.
Okay.
Myself, Lincoln Phillips, a few of us were all
Where
seniors.
St. Crispin located?
That pitch was right opposite Fatima College on Mokrapa Road.
All right. Okay.
Yeah. And then I went to QRC in 1954.
So you passed the exam. I guess you're one of the bright boys because when you passed it.
Well, I won. I did win a college exhibition. I actually was 23rd in the island because they only gave 100 exhibitions at that time.
Okay.
So I went off to QRC, and that is where I started to play more sport.
From first form or later in the.
Well, there were levels of sport. There was the junior course, which was 12 to 14.
Mhm.
I was going on 12 when I entered QRC. And then there's the A course and B course, which is 14 to 16, and then the senior teams. So I started playing the junior team, the under 14 team, 12 to 14. But by the time I was 14, I played in first level, first division in Port League. I didn't play intercall that year. I represented QRC at that level after intercall.
Okay.
And then it was 1957 that I played my first full year in the first division in Port of Spain.
With QRC
With
or
QRC, yes.
okay. Did you move on after graduating from like 67? So what did you do after it's 57 years old, right?
57, yeah.
Right. So what you did after you graduated from QRC?
Well, before that, let's back up a little bit
Mhm.
because after the 58th season,
Or before you go there, hold on a sec. Any accomplishment you'd mentioned Intercol? I know you guys always wanted a goal. That was your chorus. You always
and
want
we
a goal.
got some, we got a few from time to time, not as many as you would like or as frequently as you would have liked to,
Mhm.
but we did get a few from time to time. So
Okay.
this, now in 1958, we won in the call in 1958. We didn't win in 57, we won in 58.
Mhm.
And at the end of that season, I was selected to take part in the national trials. The British Caribbean Football Association, the BCFA,
Mhm.
they were going to send a Caribbean team to England in 1959. So I was selected to take part in Trinidad trials because there was a tournament between the BCFA members, I think Trinidad, Jamaica, Barbados, British Guyana, and St. Vincent and Grenadines. So I was invited to try for the Trinidad team. I didn't make the team. I played reasonably well, I think. I mean, the coach thought I played well enough to make the team. The thinking at the time was I was still young. I was 16 at the time. I was young and I would have many more opportunities. You know, that kind of rhetoric you heard back in those
Yeah,
days.
I got that.
All right, so you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah. Unfortunately, that was the last year that I played without injury. Because right after those trials took place February, March of that year, of 1959.
Mm-hmm.
In April of 1959, I had my first major injury. The track and field was my loves, and I was a good long jumper. As a matter of fact, at that age, at 16, I was the second best long jumper in Trinidad and Tobago.
Is that right?
Yeah, and I had an accident training one afternoon, and I totally destroyed my right knee. The ACL was torn, except that I wasn't aware of it at the time because you didn't have the kind of diagnostic
That's right.
and the kind of medical support that you needed. I know my knee was badly injured. I couldn't do anything for quite a while. Eventually, after some kind of rehab, there was a man by the name of Mr. Ogle who ran Ogle's Commercial School.
Mm-hmm.
He was a kind of physiotherapist, not quite, but, but, but you went to him when you had problems with your joints.
When
I,
water flower.
yeah, so I found him eventually, and he said to me, you're gonna have to have surgery on this knee. I eventually had my surgery in 1960. So 58, 59, I happened to play. I was captain of the QRC team in 1959. I missed the early season. I decided to play in September. We won the Intercolon that year in 59. In 60, I had my surgery. Dr. Robertson, who was the only orthopedic surgeon in Portsmouth at the time, he was also a QRC alumni. He had left, he had been a QRC student. So he did the surgery. He had to repair the collateral ligament, the ACL, put a pin in there, and I mean, it ended my track and field career, but I continued to play football for the next 6 years, I think, in Trinidad. I left QRC in 61, joined Dynamos, which was the up-and-coming youth team in Trinidad.
So Dynamos was Classy second team or what? Dynamos, a lot of the guys,
Well, part of what happened is that the coach of Dynamos at the time was Geoff Chambers.
Yes.
Geoff Chambers was, in my estimation, the best coach in Trinidad. He had played the game, he had become a student in the game, was studying systems. I remember he used to share some French magazines with me that I could translate, and that's when the backward center forward, Alfredo Di Stefano, Real Madrid was not coming in, that kind of stuff. And he was on top of that kind of stuff. And my previous captain, Anthony Skerritt, when he left QRC, he went to Dynamos.
Mm-hmm.
So even though I supported Maple, Maple was the team I supported, Maple was my team.
Mm-hmm.
But, they called them the government at that time.
That's right.
But I felt I wanted to play with Job, I wanted to play with Skerritt because I knew them. I felt they were heading in the right direction as a young player,
Mm-hmm.
And so I joined Dynamos. Played with Dynamos in 62, 63. Had a major injury with my left knee.
What's going on with you?
And the thing is, what was interesting is that this thing happened.
You getting those injuries in tackles or?
Well, the first injury was in long jump. I slipped on the takeoff board.
Yeah.
And totally destroyed all the ligaments in my right. The second injury was a soccer injury. The season was over in 1960. This would have been 62. Yeah, the season was over because Dynamos had won the FA trophy in 62. I had been selected to play for North Trinidad in North South Classic in '62. So things were going well. Things were sort of back on track. And the season was actually over, and Dynamos was playing a friendly game. And I jumped ahead of ball, and the defensive player got under me. So I hyperextended my left knee when I landed,
Yeah, yeah.
toward the ACL again in my left knee. So now both knees had suffered serious injuries.
So you're too near,
Right. I continued to play. I continued to play, but I went to Maple in '64 and then left Trinidad in '65.
Did you play with Maple in 64?
Yeah, I played Maple in '64 and '65
Who,
before I
who,
left.
who was there on the Maple team at the time?
Sedley was the captain.
Yeah.
Eddie Aliong, Andy Aliong, Tyrone De La Bastille, Saki Offord.
The Guns?
Yeah, yeah. Alvin Cornell, Ronald Woods. Yeah. So yeah, we did win the league that year.
And you were actually starting, playing, or
Yes, I was a starter. Yeah, I
what position?
striker.
With Andy?
Yeah, yeah.
Wow, Jonesy, you're not easy.
So yeah, I played for Maple that '64 and '65, and I left in '65, and I came to Canada.
So you are the only pioneers here. That's the earliest year here so far, and doing a couple of the other guys in Iere. 65 is the earliest landing
Is that right?
year so far.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting. I came to Queens in '65, so I went to Kingston, with Queen's University in Kingston, Ontario,
Yeah.
and they had just reestablished a football program, a soccer program, the year before in 1964. But at that time, the approach to the game was really very fundamental. The players were not very skilled, didn't know the game very well, sort of saw it in the same way as they saw ice hockey, that kind of, as a matter of fact, they even used some of the same terms, checking and that kind of stuff,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So I then became a player coach.
Okay.
Yeah, we won the Eastern Conference of the colleges, of the Ontario colleges, and we came to Toronto to play UFT. And that's where I ran into Miles Sousa, because Miles played for UFT.
Okay.
And that would have been 1965. So of course, UFT beat us, I think 4-1, bigger school, that kind of stuff. And I stayed in Kingston. I graduated in '69 and moved to Toronto in that summer. And that is where I became involved with Iere when they started in 1970, I think.
Yeah. So when you came in 69, was West Indies in existence?
I don't know.
Okay. So what was your connection to Iere when you came down from Kingston?
When I came down from
Got
Kingston, there was
reacquainted
no
with Miles,
Iere. There was no Iere in 1969. I think the conversation started subsequent to that, because I mean, I knew Scaro, I met Miles, and I met a few other Trinidadians who were playing soccer. And I think the conversation started about forming a team. I mean, part of it is whatever you did back in those days as new immigrants, you always look for companionship, people that you could relate to, people who could understand your story, because that was a critical support, which you didn't have in the community at large. So you tended to get together as frequently as you can. And I think that was the kind of environment in which Iere was born.
Okay. What was your capacity in Iere first year? You remember the first year, the formation, the inaugural season, if it was a season or if it was just scrimmaging before you joined the league?
I vaguely remember some of the initial things that we did because we used to meet at the International Students Center on St. George on the U of T campus.
Mm-hmm.
Because and so that's where IE was founded. We had the first meetings there, we had the first election there. I mean, I was elected the first president.
Okay,
And
there you go. First president, yeah.
yeah, and then I left in 1970, the end of 71. I went back to Kingston.
Oh, job opportunity or?
No, I went to pursue a master's.
Okay, further studies, okay.
Yeah. And then when I came back to Toronto a couple of years later and became engaged again with IEV. I was a coach for a couple of years. And then by 1975, I got involved with the Harriet Tubman Center steel band program.
Okay. Did you have
And
any background in the steel band music? You know?
yes, well, I started playing while I was at Curiosity. I started playing with Invaders.
Okay.
And after the festival in 62, we started a small group, Ray Holman, David Waddle, a few of us. And then that group joined Starlip for Carnival 1963. So I played with Starlip 63, 64, 65 when I left and remained a member of Starlip ever since.
What instrument you played?
I started playing the Garapan. When I moved to Queens, they had a steel band, which again they started in 64. And there was a second pan there that nobody played. So I started playing the second pan there, became the arranger of the group. And eventually started playing the tenor pan because the tenor pan player, Dennis Awang, moved on. You must have melody, so I ended up playing the tenor pan. And I continued to play the tenor pan when I moved to Toronto. So when I was at
Did you study music? Did you study music?
I didn't formally study music until 1977.
Okay. So that's from Harry Tubman in 75. That's where you got serious then.
Yes, right. And that is where I started to move away from the football.
Yeah, you disappeared on us.
Well, I didn't quite disappear. The thing is, I felt that there were enough competent people to really manage the football, to make it go in a way that would make us all proud. And so that's what I did. I mean, I know you had come in here, Loney, Caro was still there, Shecky, because Shecky was also managing football at the Tubman Center. Football and basketball, I mean, Shecky was a sort of sports programmer at the Iere Tubman Center, and he did a great job of that. So I knew that there were good people to manage football, and I started to get more into music. I started to write calypsos, theater, again, all that kind of stuff.
I was watching a picture, and that picture, I think you're in it. That must have been 76, 76 or 78. I believe it's 76, where it was you and Martin Roland was playing in that picture. So I don't know. So you still had to be around either assisting the coaching because I can't remember you and I being playing together. I mean, might have been
Oh,
different
we did play
parts.
together. As a matter of fact, I was looking at a picture a couple of days ago of Iere. No, while you were playing, I was a coach.
Yeah,
Yeah, I was coaching at that time. We never played together. You're absolutely right.
yeah. As a coach, I kind of like. I kind of understand your philosophy. Kind of. Sometimes you have. I mean, I've been under Dennis Yip, and I've been under different type of coaches, but you're one that you're willing to listen to and find out where you're coming from, you know?
Yeah, but part of the thing is, I've always been physically small, as you see. I mean, I'm not 6 foot.
Mm,
So any sport in which I became involved, I found it important that I really become a student of it. I study it, I read, I speak with people, so that whenever I have to perform, I could perform at my best. I could get myself ready as well as I can. And so that when I started to do some coaching, I continued to study and continue to read about football so that I could help players to understand systems. That's one of the things that, we did at QRC. We did a lot of that. We learned that at QRC, in that we would go and look at teams. We didn't have film to look at, but we
mm-hmm,
would scout teams. And then we would come back to school, and we had a table tennis board on which a soccer field was marked out in white. And we had players. We put these players in place and determine, okay, if this is the situation, what do you do? How do you approach it strategically? How
mm-hmm,
do you go into this game? So planning was always part of what we did.
mm-hmm.
And so whenever I had the opportunity to coach players, that was always my approach.
Yeah, yeah, I can see that. Let me just get this closure on the higher aspect of it now. What you think, and I'm asking all the experience and the founders who probably should always have Irie sentiment. What you feel, even with your moving to the Tubman and stuff at the time, what was the challenges of Irie then, and what you feel that you could have seen, or any fears you had for where the club is eventually now, a defunct club?
Well, quite frankly, at that time in the 70s, and that would have been the mid to the late 70s, I felt the club was in good hands, administratively and otherwise. But then we started the Irie tournament just around that time,
Mm-hmm.
and the tournament started to grow, teams coming up from the United States and other places. And administratively and program-wise, the
Mm-hmm.
club seemed to be on a solid foundation. I sort of moved physically more away from it. I think I remember in 1988, I went to see a specialist at the Toronto Orthopedic and Athletic Hospital on Wellesley Street. And the surgeon told me at that time that I had to have knee replacement surgery. I
Mm-hmm.
said, doctor, not on your life. You're crazy. I'm not doing that at this time. He said, well, Mr. Jones, you could try and strengthen your quads and all that, but eventually, this have to happen. I said, okay. I stopped playing soccer and I moved totally away from it because I didn't want to be tempted to do anything foolish.
Mm-hmm.
But at that time, I felt I was in good hands. The young people started to come into the club. The annual tournament was doing well. So I did not foresee the demise of Ivy. I was aware that if the older members of the club did not embrace and nurture the younger members, that there would be a challenge. And that's the same for any organization.
Correct. Correct.
Because in the natural cycle of life, you're born, you grow, you live, you grow, and you die. So if you want something to continue, there must be a way to bring younger people into it all the time,
Mm-hmm.
because it would die. And I knew there was some resistance by some of the older members to what was perceived as some of the quote unquote attitudes of the younger members. And that's the same for any organization. Generations have different perspectives on life. And if you are the older generation wanting something to continue to succeed, you have to bridge the gap.
Yeah.
You have to prepare for succession. It doesn't just happen. by osmosis. You have to actively prepare that succession. And if you don't do it, then your organization runs the risk of being defunct. And I suspect that that is what happened with Iere.
That's my version. That's my version. On as from some players, I think I was the hindrance to the osmosis, because again, you were aware of the challenge of Flemington Park and the Irie regime, I would say, because Flemington Park took off.
Right.
And it wasn't the T&D aspect. And in Flemington Park, we were having success, right? And I guess there's when you're having success in another area, whereas although it might be perceived as a lower level, and not having success in T&D, you tend to us feel that alienated. But Roland did it, and it should have been done a long time prior to that, because I mean we had Sticko and everybody. We had really, really talent that was playing on Flemington Park. Flemington Park started to be the stigma, the wedge, and you must have been familiar with Flemington Park.
Yes, I was. I mean, I didn't spend a lot of time there because that was a summer activity, and the pan and the calypso also some activities.
That's right.
So I had competing activities, which is something that drove me to the pan in the first place. If I had never received injuries to my knees, I probably would never play pan. Because the pan, when I was at Kirasi, many students played Invader, they played Tally, they played Crossfire, but primarily at carnival time, because many of them didn't play on the street side, they play on the road side.
That's right. Yeah,
which is a carnival activity.
Yes.
Now, the early part of the year, I have cricket, I have track and field. So I don't have time for fun.
That's right.
But when my track and field career was pretty well ended in 1959, that's when I started to play the pan. Because I was hanging out in Woodbrook, and most of the guys I hung out with played Invaders.
Yeah.
So I lived in Bataya, but I spent a lot of time in Woodbrook because I was going to QRC, which is not far away. And then I played some football with Fallen Angels in the Movina League.
Is that right?
Yeah.
That is Baby and them.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. That's before they Baby and them went to Malvern.
Right.
Okay. So you give me the whole Irie perspective now. I think the last time I had a little small interview with you was at the 50th anniversary of the Caravana at Lamport Stadium, if you remember correctly.
Yes, I do.
Kind of try to pick your brain a little bit and stuff. So how you evolve into that, because I might as well get all the information, because now the way life is going, we have a lot of different challenges health-wise these days, and people before me, it's important to get their history, because we have to document our own history instead of somebody trying to do it for us, and it's good.
Well, that's very good. It's very good because we haven't been very good always at telling our story, and we tend to rely on other people to tell our stories, and that tends not to work very well.
Yeah.
In that people don't always capture the intricacies of your story that made you the person you are.
Yeah.
That made your community what it is. And I think it's important for us to tell our own story. And as a younger person in this community, I think it's a wonderful thing you're doing.
You had a band, I think, too, right? Twin Birds, is it Twin?
Yeah, the thing is, that highway Tubman experience, the program eventually rolled into, in 1976, we formed the Twin Bird Steel Band. So that's where the Twin Bird comes from.
Right.
The band used to be the Harriet Tubman Survivors. And then some of the players left, Earl Lapierre was the first arranger and instructor of the program. And so they asked me to come and manage the program, which I did. We we established the program, we rebuilt the program, and then out of that program came the Trinidad Steel Band, which then became the BWI Trinbirds because BWI sponsored the band. The BWI Trinbirds then became the steel band out of the Iere Tubman Center. And it was during that period of time that I felt I was going to spend a lot more time with music.
Mm-hmm.
I studied piano for a couple of years with a woman named Miss Lam, Olga Lam. Olga Lam she was a teacher in Barataria where I lived, but she also gave piano lessons.
In Barataria? And
yes.
You met her in Toronto?
Yeah, well, I mean, I knew her from Barataria because
Wow.
everybody knew Miss Lam.
Okay.
Everybody knew Miss Lam in Barataria. And she had moved to Toronto and she was still active. And I started to take piano lessons from her. So that's where I started my formal music training. And subsequently to that, I did a correspondence course from Berklee School of Music in Boston. Because again, as I told you earlier, anytime I get involved in anything, I really try to find out as much as I could, study it, and be as informed as I possibly can about it so that I know what I'm talking about and what I'm doing.
Yeah, fundamentals.
Yeah. I think that's important. Yeah. And then I started writing calypsos. In 1980, I started writing calypsos.
Anyone made a breakthrough or?
Actually, interestingly enough, I had written songs that won the competition here with different singers. Twice with Young Beginner, once with Lady Pearl, twice with
What songs
Christian.
you want to say? The Twice with Beginner, what songs were on?
There was a song that, The Atlanta Tragedy was the first one. The Atlanta Tragedy was a song about the young man who was committing a lot of murders in Atlanta way back in 1980.
Yes, I remember that, yeah.
Yeah, so that was the song. Then I wrote the next year something called A Letter to Axworthy. And I wrote that song because the singer, Michael Moore, Young Beginner, he was trying to resolve his immigration status. And Axworthy at the time was the Liberal Minister of Immigration.
Okay.
So, yeah.
You went into politics.
Well, part of Calypso is dealing with politics.
Yeah.
Life, right?
Yeah.
And then there's a young woman who came here, Tracy Ann Anthony, who had been the junior monarch in Trinidad as a 15-year-old. A family moved to Toronto, and Selwyn Woods was a friend of mine who was also from Tobago, knew the family, asked me to write a song for her. And I did. So she won the competition in 2 years. One of the songs was Imagination, and I really loved Imagination because it was really social commentary, asking people to imagine the world as a different place from what it was. Yeah, well, yeah, because it's there was a game at that time that had just come out, it'd be very popular game called Trivial Pursuit.
Yes.
Right, and I use that as my launch. You just imagine, that you're playing this game and this comes to your mind. You talk about Mandela and that kind of stuff, and the world being a different place. And yeah, imagine Mandela as the president of South Africa. What would it look like? That kind of stuff. It was,
So as before he even he became the president, or?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So as you get into that writing and everything else, so now you're almost seeing yourself performing through these artists. I remember even Bill Trotman was saying he's doing the writing now and he's looking for people to sing his song. And I was telling him he can't be too critical because as an artist, he's a multi-talented individual. And I was telling him it might be, I don't know how satisfied you might be because, you might hope they portray it a certain way and because he was unique in his talent. So did you had satisfaction and they were performing because you had a certain imagery, I would think, when you do your lyrics. And then when they perform, or did you have input in their performance in terms of choreographing or anything like that?
Well, I did have some input, and that's one of the reasons why I never sort of just wrote a lot of songs and put them out there. Because when I work with an artist, I work an artist. And so we write the song, they learn the lyrics, we learn the melody, and then we start to think about the performance and the presentation of the song. Right? Now, and I am thinking now primarily of the vocal presentation, not the props around that,
Mm-hmm.
but the vocal presentation, the articulation of the lyrics, you know, the management of the voice. As a matter of fact, I remember encouraging a couple of singers to go and get some voice training, not because you want to be a classical singer, but you want to learn to use your voice, whatever voice you have.
Mm-hmm.
Use that as well as you
Kind
can.
of
So,
voice through. We call it voice through, like, right?
right, I mean, your vocal box, how you use it to, that kind of stuff. So, so when I work with singer, I work with singer. We spend a lot of time together. We practice, we rehearse, so that when the time comes for the competition, that singer is ready and prepared,
Mm-hmm.
and can do their best. I mean, you don't win all the time, but
Mm-hmm.
it's important that you always do your best.
So based on your writing and the fact that you had the Tubman, the Trent Bird band, how did that based on being around that experience, that's how you evolve into the Caravana?
Well, it's sort of a combination of that. In that there's just a natural interest, and I met some people who were involved on the Caribana committee at the time. People like Peter Maslin, my cousin Calvin Clark, and a few other people, and they encouraged me to become involved, and I did. And
What do you remember what position you started in or in terms of your involvement at a serious level?
as a member of the committee, I was primarily involved with entertainment
Mm-hmm.
and booking entertainment for the Caribana. So that that's when I really,
Those bands coming up from Trinidad and Tobago
right,
and everything else.
right. And that's
Was
where
your undertaking?
no, yes, it's certainly, I mean, the Blue Ventures and all those bands, I work directly with the management to make arrangements and contractual arrangements.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I first interacted with the Mighty Sparrow and spent time working with him to bring him here. We had some challenges eventually, but
Yeah, I understand Sparrow is always a challenge with it.
yeah,
Because
yes.
the thing is that one will walk off stage, so you have to be careful when you're dealing with
Well,
Sparrow.
the thing is that artists can be a handful, as you know. They
Mm-hmm.
can be a handful, but I mean, I was fortunate to be able to establish good relationships with most people. I mean, I was a no nonsense person in that I felt that if you have a commitment, you have a commitment. You have a contract, you have a contract. I didn't play games with that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I maybe came across as being tough at times, but I had to. And I mean, I think at the end of the day, I was respected for the job that I did because people knew that if we said it was 5 cents, it was 5 cents. It wasn't 3 cents or 7 cents. That's
Yeah, that's credibility.
artists have a way of playing those games with you, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, if you allow them to.
So, were you ever a judge? Because I see you were in the anniversary, 50th anniversary, you almost were passing literature to the judges or coordinating something.
I was coordinating judges. I have never, Pancho asked me to judge Panorama, I think in 1985. And I refused because judging culture is not something that I find useful. I think creativity is what it is,
Mm-hmm.
and people appreciate it, particularly, things like music where there is not, I mean, if you have a test piece, then maybe it becomes a little easier to do.
Mm-hmm.
But just judging creativity is not something that I've ever felt called to do. I think the public sees and likes what it likes or doesn't like, and people are right to make that kind of determination and then financially support it or not.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah,
So
I
I've
gave up.
stayed
I
away
gave
from
up on
judging people.
judging the panorama too because when you start having point five over point distinguishing, winner and loser or positions of you know final positions, I find that making the judge to look too experienced and that's too much expertise that I feel they don't need to render to themselves.
Right, and that's one of the reasons why when we started the Pan Alive in 1997,
Mm-hmm.
that we called it Pan Alive. It was not a competition because we felt that we wanted to move away from this competitiveness in culture all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And so the hope was that the Pan community would grow and build itself to such an extent that we'll have a large audience at that event and that the bands could be adequately compensated for their time and talent.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the steel band community changed that focus in the next couple of years and they opted for competition, and that's as it is. But that was the initial intent of Pananite, was not to be a competition.
Okay, so you're not a judge and
But I coordinated judges because I was one of the founding members of the Ontario Steel Pan Association.
okay.
Yeah, and so I was the secretary for many, many years. And when I stopped doing that, I would help with coordinating the judges and that kind of stuff because I felt I could give something back. I had some talent
Mm-hmm.
and skills that I could share with the community, so I did that. And that was very satisfying for me for a long time.
So based on the panel live here, with your champions, the reigning champions running away with the competition. And I was just before you come on, I was looking at the Jasper's performance and All Stars performance last year.
Uh-huh.
And the players, they really do perform. I don't know, nobody can match that the atmosphere of Panorama.
Always, there will always be controversy with any Panama result. Because one of the things is bands have supporters, each band has its community.
Yeah,
And to that community, that band is always a winner.
true.
You can't tell town people that All Stars they win Panama anytime, no matter what they play. But you know that.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
can't
it's
prove
true.
that.
Yeah,
It's the same way. You can't go up there and tell people Desperados they win.
yeah.
So Invaders, I mean, and all the bands in the final play extremely well.
Yes. So that Panalive idea, but I don't think you could revert back now with the way the panorama is home. You can't.
You can't. You see, part of it is in our community, and I guess maybe in many other communities, people like to know who come first and who come last.
Mm-hmm.
You just like to know, right? So I guess we are by nature competitive beings,
Yeah, yeah.
and so so it's
And it give you something to improve yourself with.
well, this is the thing. I mean, the competition has contributed to significant growth and improvement
Mhm.
in individual pan players. You could see, I mean, the skills and the talents that young pan players have now. I mean, they're out of this world.
Yeah, I remember you covered that with me in the last time.
They could really play. I mean, you can see them enjoying themselves. Their ranges have improved, so the quality of music that they've been asked to play is also significantly improved. The young people are studying music at the post-secondary level, which is great.
Mhm.
So I can see growth, and I hope that that trajectory continues, in the movement.
So where are you now in moving forward? How are you dealing with this COVID thing and this whole?
Boy, when you get to my age now with this COVID thing, if you're wise, you realize that you don't want to expose yourself unnecessarily,
Yeah.
right? So I've been continuing to keep myself busy with some music stuff. I'm doing some, I'm always writing something.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things I'm looking at now is the involvement of Curiosity alumni in the development of PAN. And there are many Curiosity alumni who've done extremely well, many who have not done as well, but who have made a significant contribution to the development of the instrument all over the world.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one of the projects that I've been working on.
That's a good project. That's something that kind of is a turn on to me, because that's around what you want to do. You want to bring back those things in perspective and
You
because
want people
it's
to
the
know
cycle of life, is not forever.
the whole issue of writing our own stories. Now, many people don't know how involved Curiosity has been in the development of PAN. I mean, this boy, Victor Wilson, he said that the first 4-note tenor PAN he tuned. He tuned those notes.
So,
Right. So, I mean, that involvement goes back to the 1930s. And it was not active involvement by Curiosity students, but the clock engaged the PAN community. So it's like one of those things that Curiosity couldn't refuse. I couldn't refuse it because the PAN community chose you.
yeah.
And in all the stories and the books written about Curiosity, there is very little acknowledgement of the depth of the involvement of Curiosity students.
So you feel that's your job now.
And I believe that it's important for people to know.
Mm-hmm.
And myself and a couple of guys are working on that.
Good.
Yeah.
So, well, Ian, I want to thank you. I see you look good, and always your spirit's good.
Thank you very much.
Well, I want to thank you for giving the time and letting the people know about Ian Jones and the Iere things, and hopefully it works the way it want to work, because
Things will work, man. When you're doing good work,
yeah,
when you're doing good work, some hand keeps you working and moving in the right direction. You're doing good work, so you'll enjoy that.
I enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it, and so thanks again, Ian. And
thanks very much, all. It was a pleasure. I really enjoyed it. All the best.
All right. Okay.
All
Take
right.
care.
Bye.
All right. Bye.